patience, empathy, kindness, serenity, clarity. Break out to the king, to a world untold. Life feeds the maze where the wind burns. Blah, 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 blah.
My first thought is, when we're trying to sort of depict both the utopian and dystopian possibilities of our computer future, why is a kind of speed metal the choice of sort of the soundtrack? Why not classic country? Why not some sort of like, C minors and F minors to get us through the night, as opposed to this sort of assault with I love that. So I love the nod to the sort of the Queen Bohemian Rhapsody kind of faux Greek chorus, mixed with this like Yngwie Malmsteen, Steve Vai sort of chaotic guitar. Yes,
there's a little Wagner in there. Sort of feels like
oh yeah, that would be that. I think of speed metal. That I would say that Wagner and speed metal. I think that's an unwritten dissertation. I think.
I feel like it's post-modern because it's basically he's singing in a very Baroque fashion.
Mm-hmm.
It's mocking the metal. It's mocking it itself, but yet it's elevating it at the same time while mocking it.
That love-hate, that kind of, if you keep using the word postmodernism, which is I think it's correct, but I think one of the things you're getting at in using that term is a way in which whatever contradictions of culture or capitalism that were the source of a kind of tension and inspiration for artists that were so-called modernists, let's say the 20th century or the late 19th century, like a Wagner, it has imploded where people are living with those contradictions, celebrating the contradictions, celebrating the way in which this world does not make sense on some level. And so, it sounds kind of chaotic.
Lyrics, life is the maze woven with words. Should you say this is so far madness and civilization to a T? Sick and tired.
Yeah, no, I think I've been thinking a lot about that. That's Foucault's first sort of published work, Madness and Civilization, early 60s, in which, he kind of does the tracing out of the kind of categorical distinction between these two sort of concepts, but they're not just concepts, they're actually, discourses in which people sort of inhabit and live their lives by. And one of the arguments he makes in there is in the sort of calcification, the congealing of that binary difference between madness and reason. There is something that kind of gets lost in the sort of modern shuffle, which is what he calls unreason, which is this sort of space of thinking, of being that mediates between madness and reason, right? And it's actually the loss of that mediating space, which is the true source of our madness, our insanity, or our debilitation, So maybe the song is somehow conjuring that in all of us to get us into this space of unreason. David, did you see the eclipse?
I did not see the eclipse.
You did? Were you listening to this inside, or were you outside with your glasses looking at the sun?
I was not looking at the sun. I was actually flying on that day. I was flying. Okay. Because
there's a great story that I keep telling that speaks to this notion of unreason a little bit. It's about the condition of bedazzlement. Have you ever heard of being bedazzled? And not like putting like shiny things on a jean jacket, but this Cartesian concept where he had this kind of little quip where he made the point of like the sun as the source of all knowledge, as the source of illumination. It is that which allows us to breathe, to live, to see what's in front of us, to investigate, to be scientific. But the irony or the tragedy is that once you turn your eyes to the sun and to begin to investigate the source of all knowledge, that you go blind, right? And it's a kind of nice little story. But I was with an analytical philosopher on the day of the eclipse, sitting in my my comfy Adirondack chair, with my special glasses, just staring at the sun, and he caught a glimpse of the sun through the clouds without his glasses. And he started being like, oh my God, I can see it with my real eyes. And he started telling everybody, look right now, you can see it without your glasses behind the clouds. And there was a mania that sort of took over all of us. And we all we're catching sort of naked glimpses of the sun behind the clouds, and I was being like, this is that space of perhaps unreason that Foucault sort of was mentioning, a space of joy, of celebration, of a little danger and risk, but also, I don't know, observation of an impossible observation, right? To be able to see the sun on some level without going blind. Anyway, I digress.
Sickness. Those are virtues of mine.
Mm.
That's
So I was a historian who. So this is a current song, contemporary song.
came out end of March.
Okay, so it's right there. And do you know anything about the songwriters? Like, is this using any AI technology to produce or to make?
No, I mean, it might be using synthetic, but it's not using AI. No,
Okay.
this is my favorite composer of all time, Daisuke Ishitowari.
Okay. Okay.
I mean,
And where does he get his vocals? Where does he get his, are there, does he have choirs that he?
Naoki. Yeah, the singer is called Naoki.
Okay.
Yeah, these are again Japanese people, just like with Persona, Japanese people singing English in English.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. It's wonderful. I think he again, like what was that, quirky note in a symphony kind of thing. This is again, I just have this lament. I think this is my personal opinion, but I think what songs do you want to listen to once the singularity happens? What's the vibe? How do you want to walk around, town with your headphones on? What do you want to be doing in that moment? What kind of songs?
Like listening to songs about a time when there wasn't the singularity.
but I think that's I think there's something what will happen to nostalgia in the singularity? Will we long for a moment before, or will we forget, or will we, this is what will happen to those memories? I keep telling my students, and I mean, you're an old timer, I tell my current students, like, what, you kids right now are the first generation. Your children and grandchildren are going to ask you, Mommy and Daddy or Grandpa, what was it like before the AIs came into college classroom that allowed you to write and to think? What was it like before then? Was there a time before then? I truly, I say that a little flippantly, but I kind of believe there's something going on there. Like, how will we remember the time before, right? That's kind of an interesting thing to think about. It's like, I'm just gonna make you listen. I'm gonna get you this. You can just see the.
Didn't you write in one of your chapters in Neuromatic about someone trying to sort of go beyond writing in like was it like just talking to talk? What was that chapter about? Because I feel like this is sort of related to that.
Well, I have a chapter that deals with Scientology and William Burroughs and some parapsychologists who were using the sort of latest neuroscientific data, cybernetic sort of sciences in the 1950s to basically at Burroughs very explicitly, William Burroughs and Brian Geisen very explicitly to transcend language, right? They saw information theory, first and foremost as basically getting rid of the significance of semantics and notions of meaning.
they were actually they were not heavy on the words. So information theory doesn't necessarily mean word, right? Because it just goes beyond the data.
Yeah, so like William Burroughs was very attracted to that idea initially because he was somebody from the 1940s who was very keen on really thinking about the degree to which language was so determinative, right? I mean, you're born into a language. This is not his original notion, but he gets it from the kind of flavor of a mid-20th century philosophical kind of Heideggerian, post-Heideggerian or Heideggerian moment where people are thrown into language. What do you do with all these, he calls them word ties, right? We're tied down by the words we use. And his whole agenda as a writer has been to, in a sense, as he says, cut the word lines, cut them to escape them. It's kind of a mystical discipline to sort of escape language. And so he was really jazzed about when he first read about the cybernetic stuff and a lot of the kind of ways in which there was a mode of communication that would no longer rely upon meaning, right? In that classic sense, but would be a new mode of being and communication. And so he, in his writing, particularly in the mid-60s, began to really push on not just using sort of juxtaposition and modernist techniques of collage, but a kind of an aggressive desire to sort of deconstruct language in front of you, where he would literally do these cut-ups and these sort of permutations of different kinds of juxtapositions between language in order, as he said, to cut the word up, the future will leak out. It's kind of a nice line.
What do you think about words weave a stealthy chain?
Well, that's a great line that, for me, conjures kind of, I think, a Foucauldian sense of discourse, right? That on one hand, when words come together as when he talks about discourse, he's using two different kinds of registers. He's talking about one, this larger power dynamic in which people and bodies and space interact in this kind of interconnected world that is woven, but it also deals with words, like classically, words, a discourse, language about things. And I think that line that, kind of gets at the way in which these chains or these interconnections are not neutral, nor are they natural. There's a politics to them, right? There's power involved in the making, the breaking, and the maintenance of these chains.
Change your view, change the meaning. That's a powerful line.
So this begs a number of questions, David. I think about getting beyond language, classic mystical discipline, right? Classical discipline about how to negate language in order to go beyond it, how to negate God in this world in order to sort of realize that God is a sort of otherworldly presence. And so Burroughs is all about silence. He says transcendence will be a space of silence. When he's very cool. He talks about the voice inside your head, not as a kind of schizophrenic sort of other voice, but he talks about that voice as a voice of culture, the voice of power. And he's like, how do I silence that voice, right? Is his kind of view. But I think, in a lot of ways, I think this how do you do that in a way that is socially responsible, or that perhaps is not susceptible to a charge of narcissism or solipsism, where, you can change your view and change the meaning, right? But what is your responsibility to this discourse, this web of language and web of words that you're in? Because do you have the right to destroy it if other people are also participating in it? It kind of gets at some of the inner kind of ethical dilemmas of radical critique, right? And those individuals who, God bless them, they see a truth about the world, but it's not doesn't necessarily flow from that insight that then any actions to manifest that truth are automatically therefore justified and ethical, right? You kind of have to get into all these other conversations.
Music so far, still.
Yeah.
Music. What do you think of music so far?
Music so far, I'm going to be honest, not my cup of tea, but I totally appreciate the sort of nods to like an 80s sort of, I mean, I grew up like Steve Vai, Yngwie Malmsteen, this kind of, those guys that could play the guitar so quickly, right? I mean, beyond Eddie Van Halen, you thought Eddie Van Halen was good with, Eruption or something like that. These guys took it to a kind of new level about the sort of speed and, also the way in which you can make a guitar sound. And I think you're quite right, hearkening back to, I think, almost classical 19th century Wagnerian sort of, kind of instrumentation. A guitar could be a lot more than just the country clangy kind of thing.
All right.
It's worth the while. Father, son. Outside, it's kindness. Those abortions mine.
What's interesting, David, so one of the critiques of our AI future is that we're just going to be really bored. There's going to be nothing new. It's just going to be like kind of all the same. And like whatever new song you listen to has been curated for you. And like, yeah, I like that song, but I'm dying inside kind of thing. And so how do you think these videos and this music seems to be assaultive? It's assaulting me, right? It's not letting me sit back and be like, oh, that's kind of a nice song. It's like,
the song is an acid trip. The song is
it's not letting me look away. It's not letting me close my ears. I'm like, oh, yeah. So what's going on there with the people who wrote it, or the way in which it fits into the sort of visual sort of stuff that it's being a soundtrack for?
I mean, it's a fighting game. Symphony is made for ABBA. I mean, it's a very simple. She's a very simple character who just is. She was created in a lab that was lived in 10 years in social isolation. Finally broke free, and she just wants to. All she wants to do is be in love with this axe that she found that turned into a key, she named Paracelsus. So that named after the German alchemist that came right before the Rosicrucians, who greatly influenced the Rosicrucians, and who fought.
Let's go back. Yeah, sorry. Go.
And who like allegedly wrote a paper about an alchemical homunculus.
Okay. So speaking of alchemy, this was brought up in actually my seminar, Religion in the Brain seminar that you took a number of years ago. We were doing presentations this week and next, and I have a student writing on the category of pseudoscience. Mm-hmm. And one of the things he's looking into is its development, its origins in the 18th century alongside the sort of, spread and diffusion of the scientific method. But in the 18th century, alchemy was the sort of whipping boy. Like, the scientists would first and foremost identify themselves as scientists by basically saying, I am not an alchemist, right? I am not doing that bullshit kind of work. And which begs a number of questions, one, to what degree is the science of alchemy a literal science, right? To what degree are people really sort of imagining that they're actually turning this piece of lead into, gold or something like that? Perhaps it's an allegory to live by or these kinds of things, but that's one question. But it does beg the question about this world in which we live in, where there's a lot of money and a lot of effort and time and investment going into building models of intelligence that are artificial, that are mechanical, that are algorithmic, etc. And I don't see many people questioning, let's say contemporary AI researchers and calling them, creating some bullshit product of intelligence. It's not really intelligence. There seems to be a lot of people who are actually kind of going on the other end, like, oh my God, you're going to build these robots who are going to be so intelligent and they're going to take us over.